Hello and welcome back to Learning Linguistics. I am Yamna. This video will be based on a significant part of speech in English grammar, which is prepositions. The presentation is an adaptation of Keith Fall's categorical explanation of prepositions in his book Keys to Teaching Grammar to English Language Learners. The topics which he has discussed are typical ELL errors, grammar explanation, native language interference, and ideas for teaching. Therefore, I will focus on these areas with reference to learning English as a second language in the context of Pakistan. Let's move to the first part, which is typical ELL errors. The purpose of discussing typical ELL errors even before the grammar explanation is to understand and eradicate the common errors significantly made by Pakistani ELLs. There are 3 sentences written on the slide and each of them is grammatically incorrect because of the incorrect use of prepositions. The first sentence is, I want to thank you of conducting a career counseling workshop for the undergraduate students on the university. Now, there are 2 prepositional misuses in this sentence that have been italicized. Of is a wrong preposition because it is used for expressing a relationship of a part of something to its whole. Instead, for should have been used here because for is a preposition which is used to talk about a purpose or a reason for something, and as you can see that I is a subject who has a purpose, which is of expressing gratitude to someone for conducting a workshop. Therefore, for is the right preposition. Likewise, on the university is again an error because on is used for referring to streets, surfaces or days, whereas at is used, should have been used here, and it is supposed to be used here because at is appropriate for specific locations and places. In the second sentence, Ali compared his father a celebrity. A preposition is clearly missing, which is also a common error committed by L2 students, that they either forgot or omit the preposition. The prepositions generally functions as connectors that link one thing with the other, and their exclusion can often result in presenting a sentence as vague. So the comparison, the analogy which the subject is making is incomplete without putting to in between, which makes the idea clear that Ali compared his father to a celebrity. Likewise, the third sentence, the lack of education onto the rural areas in Pakistan is one of the reasons for deprivation and repression, also involves a wrong preposition, which is onto. Now, onto is a preposition for indicating a movement of a verb to a position on a surface or for talking about a direction. In the sentence, there is no movement. Instead, there is a reference to a place. Therefore, in should be used in such context. The next part is grammar explanation of prepositions. This particular section involves definition, prepositions usage, problem prepositions, and prepositions combinations. Let's look at the definition first. A preposition is a part of speech that functions to create meaning in a sentence by linking nouns, pronouns, and verbs to other words within a sentence. Here are the common preposition usages: direction, time, place. Some of them are used for referring to specific relationships such as agency, comparison, possession, purpose, and source. I will specifically focus on some of the prepositions from the first 3 categories. To refer to a particular direction, the prepositions like to, in, into, on, and onto are mostly used. Here are some examples as well. The prepositions for the directions you can see in italics. For example, Hira drove to the store. Don't ring the bell, come right into the house. Next one is the preposition of time. To refer to one point in time, in, at, and on are used as prepositions, but they do have certain restrictions. In is used with parts of the day, not specific times but months, years, and seasons. As you can see in the examples in the first box on the left hand side, he reads in the evening. The weather is cold in December. My daughter was born in 1996. At is used with the time of day and also with noon, night, and midnight. These sentences with at are there in the box on the right hand. I go to work at 8 am. Ali eats lunch at noon. Sabah often goes for a walk at night. On is used for days. For example, I do not work on Saturdays. Likewise, to refer to extended time, prepositions such as since, for, by, during, from, to, until, with, and within are used, which are evident in examples in the box at the right side. My grandparents have lived in Lahore since 1970. I will graduate within 2 years. He will be in Pakistan for 3 weeks. The last one is prepositions of place. So in, at, on, and inside are the prepositions for place. The examples are here in the first box. They will meet in the lunchroom. She was waiting at the corner. He left his phone on the bed. The bed is a surface on which he left the phone. Please place the pen inside the drawer. But for an object higher than a point, over and above are used, whereas for an object lower than a point, below, beneath, under, and underneath are used. The examples are mentioned in the second box. The bird flew over the house. The plates were on the shelf above the cups. There is a hardwood floor beneath the carpet. His shoes were under his bed. Lastly, prepositions by, near, next to, between, among, and opposite are used for an object close to a point. For example, the gas station is by the grocery store. The park is near her house. The garage is opposite the house. Certain pairs of prepositions are difficult to learn for L2 learners. Falls has identified them as problem prepositions in his book Keys to Teaching Grammar to ELLs. He has highlighted some problem prepositions for Spanish and Arabic speakers learning English as a second language. Likewise, Urdu and Sindhi speakers also have trouble in learning and differentiating between some prepositions. Few examples have been mentioned here: since, for, and among, between. Now, let me make it more clear by explaining the correct usage of these problem prepositions. One of the uses of since and for is for referring to time. Since is used to situate an event in relation to a moment or point in time, like yesterday, whereas for is used to relate to an event or to a period or duration, like 5 days. What Urdu or Sindhi speakers often do is that they place for instead of since, or they place since where for is required. On the other hand, among and between also cause confusion for such speakers as they often misinterpret their use. Among is a preposition which is used to indicate something being a part of a group for discussing more than two people, things, and objects. But between is different as compared to among. It represents something in the middle or one that separates two things to discuss two people, things, and objects. One of the very important aspects which Walls has highlighted in his discussion on prepositions is prepositions combinations. Preposition combinations include adjectives plus prepositions, nouns plus prepositions, and verbs plus prepositions. This is a list which includes some of the adjectives plus prepositions, out of which I will explain adjectives plus to and adjectives plus about. To is used with certain adjectives to show the connection between people or things. For example, she is married to the director of the institute. The wealthy woman was not accustomed to cooking, so she had a hard time finding her way around the kitchen. We often use about with adjectives of feelings like angry, excited, happy, nervous, sad, or concerned to explain what is causing that feeling. For example, voters are deeply concerned about the economy of the country. Hina seems excited about the new job. This is a list which has some examples of nouns plus prepositions. I will specifically discuss nouns plus for and nouns plus to. Now, any noun and for are used together to show a purpose or function in connection with something or somebody. For example, in the first box, you can see the examples. Sarah has no valid excuse for not finishing her homework. Ahmad had certain reasons for leaving the office early. Now, on the other hand, the other one, as you can see, is noun and to together. So they are specifically used to show a relationship between one person and a thing. For example, she made a conscious decision to leave the painting unfinished. A candidate's failure to reply to an interview email exhibits his lack of interest. The last one is verbs plus prepositions. As you can see some of the examples of verb plus preposition here. I will focus on verbs plus to and verbs plus for. Now, verbs and to are used for directions or connections between people or things. For example, I am looking forward to going to the beach next Sunday. You must pay attention to the rising environmental issues such as water shortage in a country for the peaceful future of the next generations. Whereas verbs plus for are used to emphasize a purpose or a reason. For example, as you can see in the box on the right hand side, I apologize for bothering you at midnight. Ahmed was reluctant to ask for financial help from his parents. The third part is native language interference, a phenomenon that considers different sorts of ways through which a native or the first language, the mother tongue of L2 learners, can influence their learning of a second language. The Pakistani native languages that have been selected for this study are Urdu language and Sindhi language, whereas the second language is obviously English. Limited native prepositions is another sort of interference, as some English prepositions have different semantic functions, but Sindhi and Urdu languages have a singular lexeme to express those distinct English prepositions. It can hinder L2 students' learning about prepositions. The chart here shows that for beneath, down and under, there is only one particular word in Urdu and Sindhi, that is hate and niche. Likewise, for above and up, mathe and upar are used. And for in and into, ma in Sindhi and man in Urdu is used. Lexical variations also affect learning prepositions, as there are different usages of on, as it is evident in the first column. On is used for streets, for surfaces and for days. But there is a slight difference in its translation in Urdu, as the on used for referring to streets and surfaces is translated as par in Urdu. As you can see in the third column as well, हमारा घर जिना एवेन्यू पर है. स्टूडेंट स्ट्रेस मैनेजमेंट के आइंदा सेशन का फ्लायर नोटिस बोर्ड पर चस्पा कर दिया गया है. बट on that is used for referring to days is translated as ko in Urdu language, which can surely confuse ELLs, as you can see here in the example as well. दुकान इतवार को बंद है. The last part is ideas for teaching, a section that highlights different strategies and activities which a second language teachers can integrate into their lessons of prepositions. The first one is the proficiency level of learners. Basic, intermediate and advanced are three levels of language learners that the instructor should consider while designing a lesson. Therefore, there are some suggestions for designing a lesson on prepositions according to the competency level of learners. Now, firstly, the focus of the lesson for beginner level learners should be common prepositions, including one word, 2-word and 3-word prepositions with concrete and non-idiomatic meanings. Secondly, the students with intermediate level must deal with confusing pairs of prepositions. Lastly, the intermediate and advanced level ELLs are learning new vocabulary that often require prepositions. Therefore, it is encouraged that they must be made familiar with the combination of specific prepositions with certain verbs, adjectives, and nouns. The second one is auditory and visual practice. There should be a variety of preposition activities that allow ELLs to see and hear the various ways in which prepositions are used. Its example can be a picture-based activity, an image-based activity, or a situation-based activity. Now, apart from visual and auditory practices, Penny Ur in her book Grammar Practice Activities has suggested some preposition activities for English language learners which can be used for Pakistani ELLs as well. They are finding twins, guessing locations, and describe and arrange. The third one is teacher feedback. Now, prepositions are often unstressed in natural conversations, so ELLs can hardly notice and learn correct preposition usages without a teacher or a textbook pointing it out. Therefore, the activities designed for prepositions should provide opportunities for English language learners to receive feedback from teachers on their use of prepositions. Towards the end of my explanation on prepositions, I would like to recommend a practice activity. I have designed the activity keeping in mind a particular proficiency level, context, and activity type. As you can see here on the screen as well. So the learner's proficiency level is intermediate. The assumed context is first year students of a public sector university. The activity type is sentence-based activity. The question is, write a verb plus preposition sentence for each of the following context-based themes. Choose one verb plus preposition from the box below. So as you can see in the box has 5 different types of verb plus preposition, from which students have to choose at least one, and then what they have to do is they have to make a sentence on the following situations that you can see 1, 2 and 3. There are 3 different situations: poverty in the rural areas of Pakistan. Like, they have to choose this situation, and then what they have to do is they have to make a sentence choosing one of the verb plus preposition. We can also call it a situation based activity or a sentence based activity. So the second one is stress management among the youth of the 21st century. The third one is parent-child communication conflicts in Pakistan. This is a list of references. It includes sources from which some of the information has been collected for the study. Alright, this brings us to the end of my discussion on prepositions. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation.